So the Sandins now face a really tough dilemma. This group of crazy people come along and tell them that the slowest man alive killed 2 of them in defense before escaping, and they have to return him before their equipment arrives that can remove James's barricades. Because even though James only sells the best, apparently he uses that phrase very lightly. It's kind of like saying something along the lines of, Margot Robbie gave the best performance in Suicide Squad, when every single performance, including hers, is absolutely awful. The best thing of a lot of shitty things is still a shitty thing, and apparently that applies to James's own security system. I know the system looks cheap as hell, so this shouldn't be too surprising, but I honestly thought that's because the film's budget was low. After complaining that their wealth didn't prevent this from happening,
things like this are not supposed to happen in our neighborhood.
Charlie starts arguing the morality of sending the man outside.
They'll kill him. Why should he die?
This loops back to the you can't baby your kids in a world where the Purge exists argument I made in part 1. The overactor made it very clear. You have 2 choices. Either all 5 of you can die, or 1 of you can. James kind of understands this.
It's Icarus, Charlie.
Even though they made it clear they would
release the beast on him and on you.
So it's all of them, but whatever. Charlie's character motivation continues his trend of being from an alternate reality. None of them have any reason to think, yeah, let's save this guy. All he did upon arriving was stare at them, fuck off, and lurk a bit. No one even knows where he is. He hasn't said a word to any of them. As far as they know, he's planning to kill all of them. While his begging to get inside has been proven genuine with all of the preps showing up, his motivation behind vanishing is completely unclear. If this was a guy who had come in and been begging for his life immediately, okay, that's fair enough. You can feel sympathetic towards the man. That humanizes him, and maybe it's harder to turn him over. Forming some kind of relationship would have made this conflict far more interesting, but writing character moments that make sense or are interesting requires talent, something this film is sorely lacking in behind the camera. So the Purgers cut the house's power somehow, and everyone splits up to search for the man in the dark for what feels like a half hour. Yeah, split up. An unquestionably dangerous man who may be a threat to you is loose in your now light-free house, and you decide the best idea is to split up. This is the shit that was made fun of in Cabin in the Woods as being so stupid it needed external influence to happen.
No matter what happens, we have to stay together.
Calm down.
This isn't right.
What? What's the matter?
This isn't right. We should split up.
Yeah, good idea.
Really?
And that movie came out 2 years before this one. I really can't stress this enough. If you're ever planning to write a horror film, watch Cabin in the Woods first, and then do absolutely nothing that the main characters do for the first 2/3 of the film. While James and Mary dick around, Charlie's just kind of hanging out in the control room by himself. I feel like he would be the safest from their intruder, considering Charlie's the one who let him in the house, but sure, leave him completely alone with no self-defense when you have no idea where the man who could easily stumble into this room and kill your son has vanished to. Presumably out of boredom, and to quickly remind the audience that this is indeed meant to be a scary movie, Charlie stares at all the monitors while the Purgers do creepy, spooky things for the camera. For a very long time. This goes beyond the random psychotic break that apparently happens on Purge night. This is downright idiotic. I understand that James wasn't able to contact the leader through their security system, which also furthers my confusion about how they talked to the neighbors, but we'll let that one slide. But why would they assume that they were in the security room? In fact, how did they know in the first place? What if they were in any other room of the house trying to talk to the intruder or just looking for him? At the start of the leader's speech, they don't even have audio on for him, which means that by default, sound for their security system is turned off.
That one's saying something.
Mrs. Sandin?
What if none of them were near the room and they completely missed this entire speech and its instructions and therefore had no idea they were supposed to turn over the intruder? So many things in this story happen out of nothing but convenience and the screenwriters need to progress the film, but even in attempting to do that, he just gives you a shitload of downtime where people are dicking around to think about how stupid this fucking movie is. James spots the intruder briefly, and since I'm really trying to find positives here, I will give some credit for this shot. This one shot. Not because the camera work is especially good, because it isn't, but I like that you barely see the man's arm, and it's on screen so briefly that it's almost debatable if you saw anything at all. However, I have to take that credit right back because the music is absolutely dreadful. And the only reason you barely see him is because the cameraman decides to stand completely behind Ethan Hawke for way too long. The stealth tank baby finally comes into play, except Isn't the house pitch dark right now? The windows are completely covered by the solid metal sheets we saw earlier, so where is this light coming from? If this is meant to be a camera with a really high ISO, which is to say a camera that's letting in a lot of light, there should be considerably more artifacts and film grain. You could make the argument that Charlie mentioned he had installed night vision earlier, but this isn't what night vision looks like at all. There's some futurish technology in this movie, such as the camera glasses he's wearing to control this thing, but I'm pretty sure they only did this so the shots would be creepier. Night vision is very bright green, like this. If we were truly seeing night vision out of his baby tank's camera, we would have been able to spot the intruder with very little difficulty. In a film like Don't Breathe, when they need to use night vision, they get really creative with it. The room these characters are in is completely, utterly black. Since the antagonist is blind, he's at a massive advantage, and we see them feeling around the room. But they opt for a very desaturated look with just enough light to show you what's happening. In this movie, you can just see things. Also, isn't the baby eye super fucking red? Like very, very glowing red. We even see it glowing red in the setup shot for him rolling it around mere seconds before he enters the living room. So how is it when the intruder looks in the exact direction of the thing, he just completely misses it? Is he blind in both eyes and that's why he's navigating so well? It's almost made worse by the fact that he has little to no reaction to seeing this weird ass tank thing flashing lights at him, but not seeing it earlier is definitely the bigger offense here. So Charlie starts guiding the intruder to his hiding place, which they showed him in at the start of the movie when he was creeping on his mom. And this method of guidance is actually kind of creative, despite having the kid narrate everything you could easily gather from simply watching the movie.
There he is. Look at me. Come on, look over here.
Mary walks in, but she doesn't find him. Whoop-a-doo. James goes downstairs to talk to the leader before they're rudely interrupted.
I just can't find him. I said I would never deny yours or anybody else's right to purge. We're very...
Just give us the homeless pig, you fuck!
That would be very, very, very loud. If you only go around shooting people once a year, your ears would probably not be adapted to this, and you certainly wouldn't be able to shoot someone this close to your own head and not so much as blink or flinch. This should have hurt James's ears, let alone the intruders, but gunshots don't have any real volume in this movie, a recurring trend that will come up again very soon. But one CGI blood splatter and a villain kills his own men cliche later, and the director realizes that the audience is falling asleep, so boom! Jump scare, bitch! This shit always annoys me. Earlier when Mary was coming through looking for the man, I assumed that the baby tank was parked underneath the bed, which is why she was able to walk right past it without noticing. But here, I guess he's barely come out from under the bed, and now Zoe comes in and somehow sneaks up on him in a room with only one door that he's been looking at almost this entire time. I'm not anti-jump scare, don't get me wrong. Some of my favorite horror movies have jump scares all throughout them, but those jumps have meaning. They jump you when you should be scared of something. This is an area where James Wan, who's directed horror films such as the first Saw, Insidious, The Conjuring, and Furious 7, always thrives. If the tension he's building doesn't lead up to a genuinely threatening event, there's no jump, there's no noise. He just builds the tension and then he lets it dissipate.
Hey, bro. Oh, I know where you're hiding. Give me the third clap. I'm gonna get you now. I can hear you breathing. April. April.
Ha! You took your blindfold off. I win. You weren't even warm, Mom. I was in Christine and Nancy's room.
That was infinitely more intense than anything that happens in this movie, and it didn't require a bullshit sound. He makes his viewers get comfortable, and then even when he does do jump scares, he'll give a moment or two before the jump occurs. Take a look at this scene from Insidious. Now, you may not have found that scary, but Wan at least respected the intelligence of his audience. He lets the character run into the room, gives everyone a second to process that yes, there is something in there, and then hits you with the a couple seconds later, as if to say, yes, you should definitely be scared of this fucking thing. What happens here? Wow, my muscles tensed ever so slightly and then immediately relaxed because it's just the sister and there's no real threat. I could compare this scene to a better horror movie than Insidious, but honestly, I think this comparison holds more water than just about any other I could think up. They were both made by the same studio for around the same amount of money, only a few years apart. In fact, The Purge had double the budget, but Insidious treats its audience with respect. The Purge does not, and unfortunately, you can't pay someone to be more talented.
I've stayed away from sequels for a very long time, and that's why I never did any of the Saw films, because I felt that, I made the first one and I kind of told the story I wanted to do, and it wasn't for a lack of money that they wanted to, that they dangled in front of me to try and get me back. I was like, I don't make my movies for money. I mean, I don't do that. If I'm driven by that, then I don't know, then I would have picked very different films to do.
Can we expect a Purge 3?
If we're lucky enough, if the audience likes it, maybe. Universal will call me if it does well.
Now we get this very annoying, repetitive scene.
Drop your gun. Drop it. Leave her alone. I will let you, son of a bitch. If you don't drop your gun, I will hurt her and I will hurt you. We don't deserve this. I don't deserve this either. I don't want to hurt any of you. Drop your gun.
Shoot it, Mary! Shoot it!
Okay, so I've now seen this movie a total of 4 times, and I'm still not entirely sure what happened here. There's no gunshot sound effect, but there's a ringing noise as if one's happened. I guess that's what the light was, but did they seriously forget to add in a sound effect for a gunshot? And how the fuck did she miss it 2 inches away? Like, what is it with this movie and characters missing at incredibly close range? The movie also really likes to warn people when they're about to be shot and have everyone's reaction times be as slow as humanly possible.
Shoot it, Mary! Shoot it!
All the time in the world. But no, cock your gun, yell a command, and still wait a second so your daughter can get clocked against a wall. You guys fucking suck at this. They wrestle for a minute and one of them shoots the gun somehow. You really don't see anything that's happening other than James kind of shaking on top of the intruder because the cameraman really doesn't want you to see the incredibly basic choreography going on. They aren't even punching each other. I don't know why this wasn't shot cleanly. Intentional shaky cam is often used to cover up terrible stunt work or bad action, but they are literally just wrestling on the ground. Ethan Hawke shouldn't have even needed a stunt double for this. The man has 4 children. He's probably had more intense action scenes playing with his kids. But despite the ever-growing incompetence of anyone named Sandin, James wins the fight. I'm sorry, I need that again. Yes, that is how a massive vase hitting a man's head sounds. And a round of applause for that grunt, too. This is supposed to incapacitate a man, but the sound design is so fucking weak, it seems like James gently hit a chandelier just out of frame. Despite James insisting that they need rope several times, the Sandins end up settling for duct tape to tie up their uninvited guest, because duct tape fixes everything. I guess in that exchange they ended up shooting him at some point, so James says to press a letter opener in the wound. And this scene could have been intense and interesting. The victims have now become the aggressors. Oh, everything's flipped on its head now, but of course, their son still can't fucking act. Okay, Max, now I really need you to emphasize just how badly you don't want your mother to stab this man, alright? And action.
Mom, stop!
They eventually stop stabbing the guy, and the intruder uses the tried and true method of
Prolonged eye contact. 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 Prolonged eye contact.
to win Mary over so she doesn't want to give him to the Purgers. Did I mention we're nearly an hour in at this point? Yep, an hour in, and the most conflict that's happened is with Zoe's boyfriend, who died like a punk, and the invader briefly holding their daughter hostage and then getting shot. Oh, and Discount Joker shot his friend without flinching. This movie is boring. So all of a sudden, everyone at once just decides to start chastising James for trying to turn the guy over.
What's wrong?
We don't have a choice.
It's so wrong.
Baby.
This is so wrong.
We don't have any other choice. We don't have a choice.
Don't touch me.
Wait,
okay, look at you. Look at what you're doing. Nothing is ever going to be okay again.
Now, I understand that there could be a moral dilemma here. As far as they know, this man is innocent. He didn't kill any of them when he easily could have. The gang outside has done nothing but threaten them and act weird for no reason. I get it. Which reminds me, I have to imagine they're still doing this dumb shit and just haven't stopped this entire time. But the only person we've seen consistently support saving this man's life was Charlie. Zoe's been too busy crying over her dead boyfriend and also not being in most of the movie. Mary's been supportive the entire time, and James obviously still wants to do it. Now, I understand that in order for there to be a film, they have to decide not to give him up so the weirdos can invade the house and we get more scary moments. But firstly, they could have set it up far better. And secondly, it could have not taken until there's only 20 minutes left in the movie. Stop building a trailer around the last 20 minutes of a movie. It's fucking annoying.
Save your children. Take me outside.
Now suddenly he, after everyone's changed their mind and no circumstances have changed, tries to tell James to give him up. You knew his wife and children were gonna die if they didn't give you up like 4 minutes ago. He said it.
You can either die like a man and walk outside there by yourself, or you can die like a coward and get my wife and my children killed along with you.
Why the change of heart? And then Mary changes her mind again.
Maybe you were right.
I won't talk about it after this point, but you guys get how pointless and nonsensical this is, right? It's just a coin flip. We should get him out of the house. Yeah, we definitely should. No, we shouldn't. Don't touch me. No, honey, we totally should. You should let me out there. I don't want to. That'd be bad. Wait, now I see they're actually gonna come in. I thought they were bluffing. Hand him over. No, honey, we shouldn't. That'd be bad. Shut up!
What are you gonna do?
Charlie!
What? Where the fuck did you come from? Down the hall around the corner, you could hear them talking at whispering volume. Now, I recognize that I'm probably coming off like a nitpicking asshole at this point, but honestly, I don't get this persnickety on minor details unless the movie is completely failing in every single capacity to keep me entertained and engrossed. This movie briefly had me in its first 10 minutes, then the two potentially interesting plot threads established in those 10 minutes were either resolved immediately or completely forgotten about until later. Oops. Spoilers. Who cares? So James and Mary decide they're gonna fight the intruders despite being the least competent couple I've ever seen and send Charlie to the basement to save us from his awful performance. They don't really seem to give a shit about Zoe. She just sort of walked away from James earlier in like a catatonic state, and Mary doesn't seem terribly concerned with her, so great. She's fucked off too, thank the Lord. Pretty Boy comes back in to save the movie and starts yelling at them.
I'm sorry to tell you this, but your time is essentially up. You failed to deliver the homeless swine.
This is the second time he said swine in a really awkward way.
Tell me, why haven't you delivered the filthy swine to me yet?
And it makes me assume that Australians don't really use that word, so they have no idea how to say it with an American accent. Or maybe they just don't associate with swines like I do. This guy's performance is unquestionably awful, I've already talked about this, but good lord does he save this movie from being the painfully dull snooze fest it's been so far.
That piece of filth that you are protecting exists only to serve our need to purge. So I bid thee farewell, sweet Sandins. Release the beast boys, let the killing commence.
He's too good. So the Purgers decide to violently rip the door from its hinges while the Sandins wait until the last possible second to escape it. A recurring theme amidst this family, and... Wait, seriously? That's all it took? A few stock sound effects later and the door is just off. As far as I can tell, there was only maybe 2 chains on that door. The truck clearly didn't require much gas to pull it as the door was off in seconds. I know James addressed this earlier.
Okay, to answer your question, yes, they could get in here. They could tunnel underneath us. They could smoke us out. They could devise a battering ram. Okay, I'm sorry, but it's true.
But he phrased it like it'd be somewhat difficult, not like pulling off a regular non-security enforced door. And now, 58 minutes into this 85-minute film, the cat and mouse you've been eagerly waiting for finally happens. Nearly a half hour after these Purgers were introduced, they are finally tearing the door off. As far as I can count from their first scenes walking in, there's 7 Purgers to begin with, obviously subtracting 1 considering and adding a nondescript amount of people from those new trucks. I only see 2 trucks, and assuming they were both full, that's an additional 8. So at best, it's about 10 intruders. At worst, it could be anywhere up to or even over 20. There are only 2 people fighting back, Mary and James. Charlie's in the basement hiding, Zoe's being entirely forgotten, and the intruder is still taped to the chair, which is actually kind of hilarious and makes this last stand completely pointless if he's just gonna die anyway. They couldn't have just cut him out of the chair first. But oh, I've underestimated him. It's funny, I thought for sure that after being shot and then stabbed in his gunshot wound very harshly twice in rapid succession with no bandaging or coverage for his now very open wound, he'd at least be lightheaded, but nope. Good to fall over and clumsily land on the ground, hit his head, and still be fully functional. He's jerking his body all over the place, and despite the lower stomach wound, it doesn't even seem to be hurting him. I get that he's some kind of superhero anyway, seeing as he just sort of stands out of focus and then vanishes for no reason, a trait he shares with a certain caped crusader, but this should really be straining him more than it is. Okay, so now they're all inside and continuing to act creepy for no reason. This guy just sort of shoots at a wall, this retard skips about like a child. But this motherfucker drives me crazy. He just pops his head in the window directly behind one of the mere 5 people in this home, and despite clearly seeing that she's armed and poses a threat, makes no attempt to sneak into the building or chase her. He just kind of looks at her. Wanna know why? It looks good in the trailer.
Nothing is ever going to be okay again.
The leader goes into the house, and now someone's in the basement with Charlie, so he backs up like 2 inches to hide from them, but then doesn't shut his flashlight off. As he continues to quietly look around a room that's pitch dark other than the massive light source he's holding, he suddenly lands on one of the Purges, who, as is tradition in this movie, appears through the magic of editing and genuinely blind characters. Just before Charlie's about to die, James enters the room and shoots the Purger in a rhythmic pattern that sounds suspiciously like the Terminator 2 theme song. That has no bearing on anything, I just thought it was interesting. Still, no worry about their daughter for some reason. Do you think she'll come back into play at a random moment when it's helpful to the story? Have you been watching this review? Oh, there she is! I was getting worried. I thought the only person or character to remember that Zoe was missing was me. Luckily, she's just hiding under a bed with no weapon like a fucking moron. Apparently, she never watched Taken. Meanwhile, James and Charlie make their way upstairs. Excuse me, James, what the fuck are you doing? Your house is being infiltrated by an unknown amount of armed and deranged individuals, one of whom you just killed, and you're slamming doors behind you. That door was upstairs, so it's not like no one would have heard that. Charlie almost saves my faith in this movie by actually mentioning Zoe and Mary, so I guess the characters only remember Zoe when the scriptwriter does. James confusingly brushes this off with a "they're gonna be fine," despite having just saved Charlie from death with milliseconds to spare. But sure, they'll be totally fine. No cause for concern, apparently. Now we're back to Mary, who's only alive because this dipshit decided to dick around instead of murdering a lone member of the household. Are you serious? Twice? They pull that same shit twice with the same character. He even had a gun. You can see the gun in his hand. There it is, right there. See it? Raise it, shoot. Bam! Mary's dead. Only 3 people left, but no, this movie's so obsessed with people in slightly creepy masks acting slightly creepy that it takes about 300 times longer than it should for shit to actually happen. James manages to take out another member of the gang despite holding his shotgun in a way that could have broken his ribcage or knocked him on his ass. Wow, they really could not be more impractical, could they? Okay, I will begrudgingly give slight realism points here. One of them just immediately saying "oh shit" and sloppily scattering to cover was actually pretty good. It's still fucking dumb that they were piggybacking in the first place, but at least I got a chuckle out of it. It's something. Anyway, despite James being just about the worst shot ever, except for that one time less than 60 seconds ago when he wasn't, he manages to kill the female intruder pretty quickly, and despite a bit more struggle, kills the male intruder as well. One more through the window, who James also kills with pretty minimal struggle. Bear in mind, he's taken 5 lives in a little over 2 minutes of screen time and seems completely remorseless about it, yet he felt terrible about sending one person to die. The circumstances are obviously different as their house is being invaded, but you'd think he'd at least vomit after killing the first Purger, or even back when he killed Henry. He didn't seem shaken by taking lives, so this is just a really inconsistent character trait. But somehow this dumb piece of shit just wanders around a corner and gets gut stabbed by the leader like it's nothing. Of course, he does that weird bedside manner thing that all crazy villains do and even gives him a little kiss. Aw, how sweet. Now, if this movie were to keep consistent logic, James would be completely fine. After all, we've already seen a man who was shot and stabbed twice in an area shockingly similar to where James's wound is, so James should be fine, right? No, he dies. Also, now there's 2 more and they're destroying shit, but I guess the director realized his sound team was awful, so it's just silent with really bad music underneath. But oh, what have we here, young Charles? The neighbors are coming to save the day. They kill these 2 idiots and then Mary gets attacked. So now we get another awful fight scene where Lena Headey starts screaming in a way that sounds weirdly similar to that stock woman screaming sound effect that so many movies have featured. So this girl fucks around with Mary for as long as humanly possible, and ooh boy, here come the neighbors again. Wait, is she just, are you not gonna pick up your guns that you were holding in the least convenient way possible? Despite the fact that you couldn't shoot this woman with a several second head start, you don't think it's worthwhile to at least grab them? Just pick them up, put them in your pants pocket, just hold on to them. So James is bleeding out, and whoo, what do you know? The leader who stabbed him is right nearby. Good thing you forgot to grab your gun, you dumb idiot. And Charlie also forgot to grab his gun in the basement, apparently. They kind of just glossed over that detail. You could easily have 3 guns on him while he's dicking around with his gun down, but nope. Gotta make it intense, bro. Will the Sandins make it out? Wait, there's one missing. Oh, there she is, just in time to be convenient to the plot again. Which still leaves us with the intruder, the man who was taped up pretty close to the entrance of the house that apparently no one ever came across. Now James is dead, and in come the neighbors from earlier. The neighbor lady whose name,
So, are you having your annual party, Grace?
Right, Grace, explains their presence.
We saw that you were having some trouble. We decided to help you. Don't thank us too much, Mary. The truth is, you're ours, not theirs.
Oh no. This movie still isn't over. The neighbors decide to kill the remaining Sandins since James is already dead, and they're all mad that James got rich off of selling them their security systems. I guess. This movie would have been so much better if the neighbors were the ones invading the house to start with. That makes so much more sense on literally every level, and the fact that they kind of use it just makes it more annoying.
I swear to God, I will shoot it right now.
If by him you mean the ground to his left, then sure, keep holding your gun that way, bud. The neighbors tape him all up, and hey, look, it's poetic justice, because they taped up the guy. Except they decided not to kill him, so it's like not really poetic justice, whatever. Thankfully, despite this movie dragging on horribly long, Lena Headey continues to be a pretty solid actress. Her counterpart admittedly isn't doing so hot, but Headey does a fantastic job convincing me that she's really willing to give up her life for the sake of her kids. So, good job, movie. That's what, 4 things you've done right? The opening titles, the subtle flower reference, one shot, and Lena Headey. That's what a movie should strive for. 4 out of 50 ain't bad. So since this movie's incapable of killing any named characters without a shitload of preamble, we get this scene where the neighbors all make a prayer circle and recite what I guess is the new Pledge of Allegiance.
Blessed be the new founding fathers for letting us purge.
While this could be a nice moment for world building, all I can think about is the fact that I know they're stalling. See, look, it being able to play music helped once. Hey, there's our man who's still suffering from a gunshot. He takes out one of the neighbors, then holds the rest hostage. The main neighbor lady just looks like she's smirking throughout this entire scene. It's great. It's just awful performance. So now that they have the upper hand, they have a choice to make. Spare the neighbors who tried to kill them, or let them go. This woman seems eager to die, I guess, and I share her eagerness. I really just want to be spared from her fucking terrible acting.
Oh, for God's sake, just do it. Come on.
We are gonna play the rest of this night out in motherfucking peace.
This scene I actually have to give credit to. This movie could have gone the full schlock route, just killed all of them, happy ending, credits roll. But it went with a less predictable ending, just making them all sit around and talk. Okay, I understand they couldn't restrain themselves, but man, that was really satisfying. They saved all the good sound design for that one scene. Honestly, if the entire movie was like its last few minutes, I probably would have loved it. The alarm to end the purge goes off and she kicks everyone out. And the homeless man leaves with a nod, walking as though he's barely been hurt. Hooray. But all of a sudden, there's a whole bunch of sirens going off. Like, immediately. Were police, firefighters, and paramedics not purging as well? The announcement explicitly said none of them would be available during the purge.
Police, fire, and emergency medical services will be unavailable until tomorrow morning at 7 a.m. when the purge concludes.
I understand they'd need emergency services pretty shortly after a purge night, but wouldn't it take at least an hour? Whatever, movie's over. They say it was a successful purge night and you realize you wasted your time. I understand that me saying this movie is bad is not a new criticism. In fact, it's the most common criticism, but that's exactly why I'm not saying this movie is bad. I'm saying this movie completely failed. Very, very, very little about this movie works on any level. The acting, with one exception, is awful, either in a way that's unpleasant to watch or in a way that's hilarious to watch. But what's most egregious about this movie is the waste of a premise. If you wanted to make a bad home invasion movie, you can do that without this premise. Just look at The Strangers. That's actually a pretty good premise for a horror movie. There are people who want into that family's house for seemingly no reason. That's much more horrifying than these crazy preps who want to kill a homeless man. But The Strangers isn't a very good movie, and that's okay. It delivered on what people who went to see it wanted. Quality aside, it was a home invasion movie with jump scares, creepy masks, and death. People got what they expected. But this movie completely flipped off everyone who saw its trailer. It seemed like it might be something of a unique home invasion movie, along the lines of You're Next, which I would like to note is a much better version of this movie that you should definitely watch. It's campy, gory as hell, and most importantly, fun. A badass protagonist, creative deaths, great design choices. You're Next is the movie that The Purge should have been. But instead, it's 25 minutes of nothing important, another 35 minutes of almost literally nothing, 15 minutes of actual invasion, and 5 minutes of resolution. I can handle a movie with a slow pace, especially in the horror genre. I would argue that The Witch is one of the slowest paced mainstream horror movies in recent years, and it's also one of my favorites. Boring does not mean slow. Boring means boring. The Purge is the principal example of a fun idea for a movie turned into a terrible, boring, overlong movie. And when your movie isn't even an hour and a half and I'm calling it overlong, that's where you know that a massive failure has occurred. So when a sequel was announced with the same writer and director returning, you can imagine how excited I was. But much to my surprise, the second movie delivered a lot of what this one should have. And I'll be talking more about that next year.